What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the C's News channel with me. Today we're diving deep into the latest happenings surrounding the Boston Celtics, particularly focusing on their NBA offseason moves, roster updates, and what all this could mean for the upcoming season. There's been a lot going on recently, and I'm excited to share some thoughts, break down the news, and get into some of your comments. From yesterday's video to close out the show, it's been incredible. To see the community grow, the vibe has mostly been positive, and it really feels like we're building something special here. So before we get to deep, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button, smash that like button, and ring the notification bell so you don't miss out the next time we drop some sweet Celtics content. Now, speaking of dropping news, the Celtics recently waived their reigning league MVP JD Davidson. That one was a bit of a bummer for me. I was a fan of JD. He's shown a lot of promise and heart. And although I always thought his size might limit his impact at the NBA level, I truly believed he was on the cusp of carving out a role with this current Celtics roster. He thrived in the league and participated in Summer League the last few seasons, which made it seem like this could be his year to break through. But the front office decided to part ways with him, which leaves the Celtics roster in an interesting spot. With this move, they're now one player shy of a full 15-man roster. And that vacant spot opens up several possibilities, which we'll get into. What's worth noting is that this isn't the first time the Celtics have started a season with an open roster spot. Over the last few years, they've done this a couple of times, maybe not consecutively, but it has become a pattern. The key reason behind this strategy seems to be financial. By having an empty spot, the Celtics keep their payroll under the second luxury tax apron. Getting under this threshold is a major goal for the front office because it limits the financial penalties they face. The Celtics clearly want to avoid being a super tax-heavy team again, especially if they don't anticipate competing for a championship this season. That brings us to the big question: what does this open roster spot really mean? There are a couple of likely scenarios. One is that the Celtics just leave it open for a while, using this as a placeholder while they figure out their next move. It gives them flexibility and keeps their payroll in a manageable spot. The second and more speculative option that's been buzzing in rumors and discussions is that the Celtics could be eyeing Ben Simmons to fill that vacancy. According to Vegas betting odds, Boston is currently the frontrunner for Simmons' landing spot, with other teams like the New York Knicks and Sacramento Kings also mentioned as possible destinations. Here's where things get wild. There was this absolutely 20-5 level tweet from Jake Fisher, who works with Mark Stein, that said Ben Simmons' pending decision is reportedly holding up the market for Russell Westbrook. I mean, think about that for a second. The idea that Ben Simmons is influencing the entire trade and signing market to the extent it impacts Westbrook's potential moves. That's incredible and kind of absurd, but it shows how much intrigue and uncertainty still surrounds Simmons. I get that some in the community, especially the chat from yesterday's video, are pretty excited at the possibility of Simmons coming to Boston. I respect that optimism, but I'm personally a bit more skeptical. I feel like we've been burned before. The old saying goes, fool me once, shame on you; fool me twice, shame on me; fool me a third time. And maybe it's time to get a therapist or lay off the conspiracy theories. Simmons was an ALL-NBA and all-defensive caliber player before COVID and his back issues sidelined him. It's been a long time since he played meaningful basketball, and even longer since he was close to that dominant version of himself. Some of the doubts are physical. Simmons reportedly has lingering back problems, and some are mental and situational. It's not just about skill, it's about mindset, confidence, and fitting into a team culture that might push him in the right direction. Now here's where I try to keep a glass half full perspective. Remember how the Celtics entertained the idea of bringing in Damian Lillard? That felt like a high-risk, high-reward move, and while it didn't come to fruition, it showed a willingness to take chances on star players with questions. Simmons might be similar, but on a smaller scale. If the Celtics can bring him in on a vet minimum deal, it's low risk financially. They could give him a chance to rebound, defend, push the pace, and hopefully reignite that star energy. Maybe Joe Mazzulla gets him watching films of Ben Affleck and Jeremy Renner in the town repeatedly to soak in that Boston grit and mentality. And suddenly Simmons starts knocking down open shots and running the floor again. If it works, great. He's a useful piece on a team that realistically isn't competing for the Eastern Conference title this year. If it doesn't work, then the Celtics can just cut ties again. No harm, no foul. I like that kind of trial by fire approach if it's on a cheap deal. but I lean toward the idea that the Celtics might just hold off on adding anyone else until they figure out bigger moves. Maybe they'll be targeting someone like Anthony Simon, Sam Hauser, or George Niang to fill out the roster, bringing in someone who pushes them over the luxury tax second apron line without being a clear upgrade. Doesn't make a lot of sense financially or strategically, especially if they're eyeing a long-term rebuild or at least a retool year. Now, if we take a step back and look at the Celtics' current roster, it gets even clearer why this might be a gap year. Let's just run through it quickly. The known core includes Jaylen Brown, Derek White, and Peyton Pritchard. Then there's Anthony Simons, who some people think will make the team. Beyond that, you have Luka Garza, Sam Hauser, Hayden Gray, a rookie who might or might not make the team, Hugo Gonzalez, Josh Minott, George Niang, Neemias Key, Miles Norris, a summer league standout, Baylor Shire, Max Shuga, Jordan Walsh, Xavier Tillman, and Amari Williams. That's the roster pool. When you line this group up and think about Eastern Conference competition, it's hard to be optimistic. If the Celtics' main core beyond Brown and White is fringe rotation players or young guys still developing, it doesn't stack up well against teams like the Cavaliers, Knicks, Pistons, Magic, Hawks, Bucks, Pacers, and even the Raptors. These teams are either on the rise or at least have more proven depth. The Celtics look like a team that might just barely squeak into the playoffs or even miss the postseason entirely if things go sideways. The good news, or at least the silver lining, is that this could be a strategic reset. Maybe the Celtics use this year to give the young guys consistent minutes, see what they have in some of these developing players, and let Jaylen Brown and Derek White rest a bit to preserve them for the future. JB was already back in the gym working with a viral shooting coach just days after off-season surgery, which is encouraging. It shows dedication and that the team is at least trying to set the foundation for a bounce back next season. If they accept this season as a gap year, the Celtics could also benefit by securing a top 10 draft pick in 2026 or 2027, adding young talent to complement Brown and White, and eventually Jason Tatum when he's fully healthy. Tatum's recovery from injury will be key if he can come back fresh and ready for the 2627 season. That might be when this team really makes a push again. That said, there's still the question of whether Jaylen Brown will accept a less competitive year. As someone in the community pointed out, Brown is in his prime and likely still wants to rack up All-NBA honors. Playing fewer games or not pushing for 65-plus wins might hurt those chances, and that legacy component can't be ignored. Maybe Brown pushes for a stronger team this year, forcing the Celtics' hand to try and compete more aggressively, but even that can be managed. They could rest players strategically and still keep the team's record low enough to secure draft assets while preserving health. All in all, this offseason moves and roster situation paints a picture of a team in transition. Whether it's leaving a roster spot open, possibly bringing in a risky vet like Simmons, or focusing on the development of younger players, the Celtics appear to be planning for something other than immediate contention. It's a balancing act between managing finances, player health, and competitiveness, and it'll be fascinating to see how this all plays out. So that's where we stand with the Celtics right now. A roster with question marks, financial constraints, and potential new faces looming on the horizon. It might not be the most exciting time for some fans, but it's a realistic snapshot of a team figuring out its next chapter. I want to hear what you think. Is this gap year approach something you can get behind? Are you hopeful about young players stepping up? And how do you feel about the rumors swirling around Ben Simmons? Drop your thoughts in the comments and let's get this conversation going. Picking up right where we left off, let's dig deeper into what the Celtics' current strategy might mean beyond just roster construction. We've talked about the potential open roster spot, the speculation around Ben Simmons, and the youthful core getting ready to take on bigger roles. Now it's important to consider the broader context, the organizational mindset, the competitive landscape, and how Boston's moves fit into the NBA's evolving environment. The Celtics have always been a franchise with high expectations, both from the fan base and within the front office. For years, they have been perceived as perennial contenders, regularly reaching the Eastern Conference Finals and even making multiple trips to the NBA Finals in recent decades. However, the brutal reality of the NBA is that contending is cyclical, and sometimes teams need to take a step back to move forward. Boston is clearly navigating that tricky transition phase. The offseason moves, or the relative quiet on the trade and signing fronts, suggest a cautious approach instead of swinging for the fences with blockbuster trades or max contracts. The Celtics seem to be embracing patience. patience with their young players, patience with injured stars, and patience with the market. When you look at the current roster, Jaylen Brown stands as the unquestioned leader. His trajectory over the past few years has been impressive. He has developed into an all-star caliber wing who can score, defend, and lead a team both on and off the court, but even Brown needs support. Derek White, coming off an injury, represents a crucial secondary playmaker and defender, and the hope is that he will return to form and provide consistency. The rest of the roster, however, feels like a patchwork of hopefuls, role players, and developmental projects. This reality is why many Celtics fans are grappling with frustration and uncertainty. It's hard to watch a team that was recently competing for titles looking so thin on the depth chart and lacking clear-cut stars beyond the top two. Adding to the complexity is the looming uncertainty surrounding Jason Tatum's recovery timeline. Tatum is arguably the franchise's most talented player, and arguably one of the most gifted young stars in the league today. His injury, which sidelined him for a significant portion of the previous season, altered the Celtics' trajectory dramatically. The expectation now is that he will come back stronger and healthier, but timing and durability remain concerns. If Tatum is delayed further or doesn't regain his peak form quickly, it could stretch the Celtics' timeline even more, pushing contention further into the future. This brings us back to the broader NBA landscape. The Eastern Conference has been shifting rapidly. Teams like the Milwaukee Bucks, Philadelphia 76ers, Miami Heat, and Cleveland Cavaliers have established strong cores and are either in or near contention. Meanwhile, younger teams like the Toronto Raptors and the New York Knicks are steadily improving. The Celtics, with their current roster, risk falling into the middle of the pack or worse. This middle ground is often the most difficult place to be. It's neither rebuilding nor contending, but rather existing in limbo. The challenge for the Celtics is to avoid stagnation and find ways to accelerate growth without mortgaging the future. That's why the financial strategy is so critical. Boston's efforts to stay under the luxury tax apron and the possibility of leaving a roster spot open reflect a long-term plan. By managing payroll carefully, the Celtics preserve flexibility for future moves. This might include absorbing a bad contract for assets, making a savvy mid-level signing, or holding cap space to pursue a free agent in the next offseason. The luxury tax in the NBA can be brutal, especially with repeat offenders paying a super tax. Boston's front office is clearly mindful of this and appears to be playing a chess game with salaries, roster spots, and player development timelines. Now let's circle back to the intrigue around Ben Simmons, because his potential rival could shake things up dramatically. Simmons represents a classic high-risk, high-reward proposition. When healthy and engaged, he is a defensive powerhouse and playmaking wing who can control games without scoring. The problem is that his confidence and shooting ability have deteriorated significantly, and his mental approach to the game has been questioned widely. For a team like the Celtics, which values culture and grit, integrating Simmons would require more than just basketball evaluation. It would demand leadership, patience, and a willingness to accept growing pains. If Simmons does join Boston, it will be fascinating to see how the coaching staff handles his role. Joe Mazzulla, who has impressed with his communication skills and player development approach, will have a significant task. Simmons would likely be asked to focus heavily on defense and facilitating while the Celtics try to find ways to mitigate his shooting weaknesses. It's a tall order, but if it works, Boston could gain a dynamic, versatile player who elevates their defensive identity and offsets some of their scoring gaps. That said, if the Simmons deal doesn't materialize or ends up being a distraction, the Celtics might lean more heavily on their young players. Anthony Simons, Sam Hauser, and George Niang could see expanded minutes and opportunities. The league affiliates also play a vital role here, with players like Hayden Gray and Miles Norris ready to push for NBA minutes. This developmental focus is crucial. With Jaylen Brown and Derek White anchoring the team, Boston can afford to bring along the younger players, slowly allowing them to learn and improve without the pressure of immediate contention. On the tactical side, the Celtics' style of play may need to evolve. The NBA continues to trend towards patience based, with an emphasis on three-point shooting and versatile defenders who can switch seamlessly. Boston's current personnel align somewhat with this trend, especially with Jaylen Brown's ability to stretch the floor and defend multiple positions. However, they need more shooters and creators off the ball to keep defenses honest. That's another reason why players like Sam Hauser and George Niang are valuable. They can knock down threes and move without the ball effectively. The Celtics front office has also been investing in analytics and player tracking technology, which means decisions will be data-driven. This could translate into smart lineups, strategic rest for veterans, and targeted player development programs. The team's sports science and medical staff are also working hard to keep players healthy, as durability will be key in a season where depth may be limited. All this discussion brings us back to the fan perspective. Celtics fans are passionate and expect excellence. The recent news might not inspire immediate optimism, but it's important to remember that building a contender is rarely a linear path. There are setbacks, experiments, and sometimes necessary sacrifices. The Celtics' current approach reflects a desire to avoid long-term damage to the roster and cap structure, even if it means accepting a less competitive season in the short term. Looking ahead, the $20 million to $150 2026 season might be viewed as a bridge year one, where the Celtics solidify their core, evaluate young talent, and prepare for a renewed push in the following seasons. The hope is that by $20 million to $160 2027, with Tatum back at full strength, Brown hitting his prime, and supporting cast players stepping up, Boston will be positioned to make a serious playoff run again. In the meantime, the Celtics fans should stay engaged, keep supporting the team, and be ready to witness the growth of exciting young players. The NBA is unpredictable and surprises can come from anywhere, whether it's an unexpected breakout from a rookie, a savvy mid-season trade, or a healthy return from injury. Boston's story this season is still being written. So that's the full picture as I see it, a team balancing between managing current realities and building for the future, carefully navigating financial constraints, potential big moves, and player development. The Celtics might not be the favorites this year, but with smart decisions and a little bit of luck, they could set the stage for sustained success down the road. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. Whispers are swirling around the NBA world suggesting a blockbuster move that could shake up the entire league. According to sources close to the matter, LAVINE, the electrifying shooting guard known for his scoring prowess and highlight reel dunks, may be on the verge of signing a historic contract with the Boston Celtics. Rumors indicate that the deal is worth a staggering $180 million, a figure that would catapult LAVINE into the upper echelons of NBA contracts and potentially reshape Boston's roster for years to come. LAVINE's journey has been nothing short of remarkable. From his early days in Minnesota, where he developed into one of the league's premier scorers, to his current status as a two-time slam dunk contest champion and dynamic offensive weapon, his game has continuously evolved. Yet despite his individual success, the Minnesota Timberwolves have struggled to build a consistent contender around him. This speculation about a move to Boston could signal a new chapter, one where LAVINE joins forces with the Celtics' storied franchise in pursuit of championship glory. Boston, known for its rich history and relentless pursuit of elite talent, has been quietly searching for a high-impact scorer to complement their core stars. LAVINE's ability to score from anywhere on the floor, combined with his athleticism and experience, would fill a critical need for the Celtics, potentially making them even more formidable. In the Eastern Conference, the $180 million figure, while eye-popping, reflects the confidence Boston might have in LAVINE's capacity to deliver on the biggest stages. Insiders suggest that negotiations have been intense, but positive, with both sides eager to finalize terms that could redefine the Celtics' offensive strategy. While nothing is official yet, the buzz around the league is hard to ignore, and many fans are already imagining what a LAVINE Boston lineup could look like come next season.